United Arab Emirates says it will leave OPEC and blow to oil cartel. Wow! Oh boy! Big news! That's actually really big news. That's actually really big. I love my multipolar world order. Prices at the gas pump fluctuating within like a 30% margin every day as the 17 different petrostates that run the world are all like hitting the buttons and levers as quickly as they can to try to over or underbid everyone else. The UAE dealt a major blow to some of the world's biggest oil producers on Thursday when it announced that it was leaving the OPEC oil cartel, which has for decades sought to control global prices and fuel supplies. A coalition of around a dozen oil exporters. I've heard of these guys. OPEC has steered prices by setting quotas for its members and allies, but the organization's power has slipped in recent years as production soared in non-member countries, chiefly the United States. So this is actually happening? Yes. I think they probably did this at behest of the US so they can pump out as much oil as they can to lower the oil shock. Maybe. There's a lot of nuance here. Crazy as it sounds, OPEC is probably a good thing, conceptually, in theory, because the global oil market is actually something you do want price and production controls for. When you start extracting oil and refining it, you can't usually control that well how much you're producing because it's very expensive to shut down existing wells. So you want market stability. You want like a coordinated idea on how much is being produced. Now, obviously, OPEC, the existing cartel, is very evil. It's the devil. So it's more like the concept of an oil cartel makes more sense than the original, than the actual OPEC is. But it is important conceptually. The UAE striking out on its own could be a bid to appease America by breaking with OPEC's price and production controls. But it's also possible that the UAE is trying to distance itself from an organization that has been, we'll say, at odds with / negatively affected by U.S. and Israeli interventionism in the region. This could be caused by infighting with the Saudis as much as it could a desire to appease America. I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea what the specific motivations for this for. If the UAE has been forthcoming, I guarantee you they have not shared all of the information, you know? So we got to wait a bit to figure out the reasons. Yeah. This is like a very complicated, I'm not gonna, I think that we can reasonably assume that this has been in large part caused by the Iran war, that this has been caused by a desire to break with the stifling controls set by OPEC. As to what extent this is a desire to work with the United States, I don't know. It is a huge blow to the Saudis. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. It's like blowing vape smoke in a baby's face. We don't know if it's good or bad yet. Exactly. Science hasn't figured that shit out yet, dog. Science hasn't figured out whether the UAE leaving OPEC is bad yet. We don't know. Before the war in Iran, the Emiratis was one of OPEC's largest producers after Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Iran, pumping around 3.6 million barrels a day of oil, or some 3% of global supply. Its departure from OPEC means little for oil price at the moment. Oh, and by the way, speaking of those oil prices, I know you guys have been sleeping on it because you people, like the average voter, are low IQ. Me too. I'm right there with you. I'm like a low IQ seal, or getting my day-to-day 24-hour news cycle. But while you guys were focusing on the world's most inept assassination attempt / false flag, you'll never guess which global marker for the crude price of oil has been skyrocketing in the past week. That's right, it's the one and only Brent, which has, over the past week, gone from 98 to 110. Yep, turns out the war is still on, folks, even when you weren't looking at it. Object permanence, ain't that crazy? Yeah, it's still going up. It's still happening, folks. Wheat futures have started to move this week as well. It's all looking quite bad. Keep in mind, it's only been about 2 months since the war began. That's less time than the first case of COVID-19 and when the lockdowns began in America, you know? I've seen a lot of the more smarmy lefty accounts on Twitter have been hitting on that point, but it's important to remember sometimes, you know, it feels like it's moving in slow motion. From a historical perspective, everything is actually moving very quickly. Have you been buying oil futures to make bank? I've actually been siphoning gasoline out of my neighbor's cars. I'm filling up jerry cans in my garage, and when the time comes, I'm going to be making bank off that. I'm gonna be selling that shit like food during a drought I'm going to be making 10 times my investment. Tastes awful. OPEC countries supplied more than a quarter of the world's oil before the war. Russia and several other countries also coordinate with OPEC through a grouping known as OPEC Plus. Sounds like a streaming bundle. Emirati officials have long floated the idea of quitting the cartel, complaining that quotas had unfairly limited their ability to export oil. In a sign of the abruptness of the break of the group, the UAE gave less than a week's notice. God, that's crazy. That's insane, man. This is the only thing that I know for sure, 100% without a doubt, is that this is destabilizing. Is this good for consumers as it will lead to competition, lead to a price war? No. It might be good for consumers in like a short to medium term range because it allows the UAE to start pumping stuff out faster. It's not going to help in the short term because the Iran war is still happening. In the medium term, maybe. In the long term, again, you really do want stable oil production, you know? The Emirati can get oil out through Oman, right? I don't think all of it. Some percentage of it. The Emiratis also just put a huge target on their back with regard to their Arab neighbors. Yeah, not to get too silly with it. Keep in mind, Iran is a part of OPEC. It makes me wonder if the UAE breaking with it. In addition, I don't want to sound too sensationalist. It makes me wonder how much of a target they're painting on their back. When the war starts to kick up again and the Shaheeds start flying back and forth over the Gulf, it just makes me wonder how many more Dubai Labubus are going to be taking the hit. Know what I'm talking about? So you mean they go for broke? What I mean is that technically, even though Iran is technically a part of OPEC, though obviously global sanctions have made their participation in the group kind of difficult and contentious, the fact that UAE is now both a political and economic enemy of Iran and of Saudi Arabia, they're kind of like out in the water there. You know what I mean? The UAE is a very unpopular country. It does not have a stable regime. Like, it's built entirely on gold and pedophilia and Western tourism. But I repeat myself. They're very, 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 very susceptible to hostility from neighboring countries. Like, Iran single-handedly collapsed their housing market. You know how much? It hasn't recovered, by the way. The Dubai housing market has cratered. And the government is still arresting people in Dubai who point out that the war is happening. That's not a joke. Like, if you acknowledge the damage done by the war in Dubai, they will arrest you. And you do not want to be in a UAE prison. They're putting themselves in a very precarious position. It seems to me like a greed run. Like, if you were the UAE, I feel like your big bet here would be to not make your neighbors angrier, you know? On top of this, Israel secretly deployed the Iron Dome to the UAE. That makes sense because Dubai is very Israeli. Worth noting, obviously, that the Iron Dome hasn't even protected Israel from Iran's drones. It will not protect the UAE. More multipolarity. CNN, how are you taking this? UAE exits OPEC, gas prices spike the highest in around 4 years. It'll get worse. We're nowhere near resolving this conflict. I don't even know how we're going to resolve this conflict.
The United Arab Emirates says that it is withdrawing from OPEC and OPEC Plus. OPEC is a decades-old cartel of the world's largest oil-producing exporters. The energy minister says that it will make it easier for the UAE to meet changing demand. But it is a major blow to OPEC at a time when the Iran war has triggered a global energy crisis and as the price of oil hits 3-week highs. CNN's Eleni Diokos joins me now from Dubai. Eleni, and so with the UAE doing this and making this announcement today, I believe they are the third or fourth largest producer among OPEC members. Talk about the significance here and the impact that it's already having within the region.
Yeah, it's the third largest producer within OPEC, and it's really significant. I mean, frankly, it's a bombshell announcement today, Biana. You know, they joined in 1967.
Only 1 week of a lead up. Only 1 week's warning, man. You gave more warning to your fucking manager when you worked at Panda Express. It's crazy.
The founding members, and that was just a few years before the formation of the UAE. And this is, you know, really going to shape what we see in the oil markets. And you were talking about WTI, you know, responding quite aggressively on the back of this news. And we've seen an increase in oil prices as we hear one of the oldest members withdrawing from this organization. This is importantly an organization that can exert influence on oil prices prices. It has the ability to control supply. So when oil prices go high, then, we start to see quotas from these oil-producing nations.
OPEC's logo sucks. Well, it's an evil group, so it makes sense, yeah.
Nations, and that starts to temper off oil prices. But when oil prices are low, that is also when they step in, specifically to protect oil producers, that if oil prices are below what it costs to produce a barrel of oil, they can also play around with that. That's why they're viewed as a cartel. The UAE energy minister says this is not a political decision, but many people are focusing on the timing.
But we don't want OPEC to collapse, right? Well, the existence of OPEC is good for global stability and everything that implies. Global stability means like consistent food prices, but it also means labubus in Israel. So you have to take it. You get it's a pretty. You're tossing out a lot of babies with the bathwater. I don't know, man. It's complicated. It's pretty complicated.
That we are currently in the largest energy crisis in the history of markets. Take a listen to what he said.
This is not a political decision. This is a pure policy position and repositioning us to be in front of the world, taking the right decision at the speed that we aspire for. To us, it's the consumers are critical. To us, we need to attain to these countries who entrusted us to build the refineries based on our crude. And our crude today, Marban, is one of the cleanest, if not the cleanest crude on earth.
What's that evergreen tweet? Can somebody explain UAE foreign policy to me? Attempts to do the most evil thing possible, then fails. I feel like this is a pure greed run that's going to end in flames, literally, as a Shaheed slams into the base of the, I don't know, what's the name of the big tower in Dubai? I genuinely don't understand how this works in their favor in the long run. Burj Khalifa, thank you. Legitimately the only word that I could pull from my mind in that moment was Big Labubu, and I knew that wasn't it.
So really important to note here that in the statement that was released today by media, they say that when they joined the alliance, they have made significant contributions as well as even greater sacrifices, they say, for the benefit of all. And that's because they've been adhering to a quote.
Think they'll still build the line? Racist, that's the Saudis. Not that there's any real difference between these pedofuck petrostates, realistically. But also, no, they've already given up on the line.
Quota system. As of April 2025, UAE was allowed to sell 3.5 million barrels of oil per day, when the capacity is around 5 million barrels of oil per day. And given that we've seen not only attacks by Iran on critical energy infrastructure targeted here on the UAE as well as other Gulf states, but also the closure of the Strait of Hormuz has completely changed the way the UAE views its position in the global energy markets. And they're saying they're going to start focusing on national interests and continue their commitment to stabilizing oil prices. But Biana, anyway.
Yeah, right. Good fucking luck, dog. The next time the hot war really breaks out, I'm telling you, Iran is going to lay the fuck into the UAE. Especially now that you can target them without making the Saudis as mad.
The United Arab Emirates has announced that it's going to withdraw from the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. That includes the bloc's broader alliance, OPEC+. Now, that move comes as Gulf countries face unprecedented economic disruption after the US and Israel war on Iran. The UAE has released a statement saying this decision aligns with the UAE's long-term strategic economic vision and the development of its energy sector. It's also driven by national interests and the country's commitment to actively contributing to meeting the urgent needs of the market stemming from disruptions in the Arabian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, which impact supply dynamics. The stability of the global energy system depends on the availability of flexible, reliable, and affordable supplies. Let's bring it out to Zero's Dominic Kane. He's live for us in Berlin. What are we to make of that statement, Dominic?
On the face of it, it's something that really concerns the United Arab Emirates. Why should people in Europe really be concerned about it? Well, for several simple reasons. This continent is already experiencing a certain degree of concern at the government.
Okay, I don't know why this person's talking to me through a veil. CNBC, are you freaking out?
Breaking news, as Joe was mentioning, the United Arab Emirates saying that it will leave OPEC and OPEC Plus as of May 1st. The country's energy minister telling Reuters that that decision was made after a careful look at its strategies. He said the UAE is doing this at the right time without hugely impacting markets because of constraints on the Strait of Hormuz. Brian Sullivan joins us on the Squawk Newsline. Brian, what are you hearing?
Well, it's brand new. I mean, this is breaking news right now, and this is a big change to the global oil order. It's a big change to OPEC as well. The United Arab Emirates was one of the key members, one of the not first founding, but first members.
The UAE was always clashing with Saudi, other OPEC members. It's not that surprising. Psycho, I'm going to straight up find you and crush you into a cube. I'm gonna turn you into a tungsten cube, 4 inches across on every dimension. It's absolutely surprising. A 1 week notice. To me, the big signal here is that the UAE is desperate to find some way to shore up its economy now that the Dubai real estate market is cratering. They're like desperately trying to see some way to keep the line going up. Because again, the UAE is not a real country. It is a dictatorial slave state run by a cabal of pedophiles. I understand I say that about many countries, but it's important to understand that in this case, all of the terms I've used should be interpreted by their most literal possible definitions. It is an actually dictatorial, actual slave state run by, I guess the level of pedophilia is about the same as the White House. It's pretty bad over there. It's not a real country. The decision here, I think, is motivated by like a desperate effort to try to shoot the line further up while the real estate market is cratering. And I just don't see this going well for them at all, not even a little bit, because I think that in the long run, Iran is more interested in cohabitation with Saudi Arabia than it is with Israel. Iran is aware of the fact that it's never going to really get around with Israel, but it does need to get along with the Saudis or whatever replaces them. If everyone in the region is anti-UAE, I just don't see how they get away with it. Crazy, crazy news to open with. Good times ahead? Well, if you're an accelerationist, we're pretty much all in on the global destabilization train, so we'll see how it goes. Are they betting on the US and Israel winning then? It does kind of feel like the Saudis are hedging their bets a little bit, whereas the UAE is full-on locking in on the hope that America and Israel are able to indefinitely extend their influence in the region, you know? Like, the UAE has been petitioning the United States for reparations for damages done following the Iran war. The UAE has been getting Iron Dome defensive weaponry from Israel. Like, it seems like there's a greater degree of, I don't know, mutual reliance there. But I don't know if that's going to work out in the UAE's favor. They're so fucking dumb, man. It is not a smart country, you know? It is not a smart country. I don't know. Like I don't know how else to put it. The leadership in the UAE are stupid, and they have demonstrated that before, you know? What else would you expect, I guess, from a country that contains Dubai? Evil pedophiles are usually not that smart. Well, usually the evil pedophiles hire people who are smart. Like, that's how the United States has worked, right? Like, traditionally, at least prior to this administration, you have the upper crust of evil pedophiles, but then you have a bunch of really competent people in the administrative state who actually do the work. But now we're gunning the administrative state, so... Imagine building, like, a golden palace for wealthy Western tourists and then placing it here, 5 fucking feet away from Iran's southern coast. If I were the UAE, I would simply not do that. Maybe settle like the regional tension first. Seriously, their housing market is cratered. Dubai housing market index. It's not good, folks. It's not good. God, look at that. Fucking grim, man. You can tell when the Iran war started, I figure. From 16.6, wow, look, the evil-ass country, man. Look at where I'm hovering right now, 16,666. Cratered since the war, basically just flatlined since. And keep in mind that a lot of this flatlining has been during the ceasefire. Like, nothing's blown up in Dubai for a while. This shit's just not recovering. Why would a wealthy Western tourist want to spend time in a city where they could just get randomly drone striked, you know? Soon the slaves will be able to afford their own homes. Like the 2008 financial crisis over there, you know? Everyone's going to be able to... Yeah. The Indians they kidnapped on work visas are going to be bringing their families over. Need to recreate this in the West.